Welcome back to the South Bromsgrove High School DV YouTube channel. Today we're going to have a look at how to pitch the Vango Apex Geo 300 tent. It's a very straightforward tent to pitch, so let's get going. So make sure that your tent bag and in a moment the peg bag and pole bag don't get lost or blown away in the wind. Get this unrolled here, and then let's unfold the tent. If you find that you've got these straps over the top of the tent, then they need to go underneath, okay? They're tension straps, so you might just need to loop those underneath the tent at this point, and then we can get this unfolded. Like all modern tents, the pole sleeves are marked up with these colour tabs here. So we've got a blue tab there and a brown tab there, and the poles are colour coded as well to match. So that makes it nice and straightforward. So I've got two identical red poles, and then a third pole is different. It's a yellow pole. Seems that my assumption of the colour coding wasn't quite right, because I've got blue and brown here, and I've got yellow and red for my poles. Let's just have a look then at the pole sleeves. This one's blue, this one's brown, and this one down here is blue. So by a process of deduction, that's going to mean that my identical poles, my two red ones, are going to have to go through the two blue pole sleeves. Remember that we're always pushing our poles through the pole sleeves. If you pull them through the pole sleeves, you're just likely to split the poles, and then that makes it much more difficult to reconnect them inside the pole sleeves. So push this pole through here. And then the odd one out, in this case the yellow pole, is going to go through the remaining pole sleeve here, which is marked up in brown. Remember to get all the poles through the pole sleeves before locating the ends of the poles into the eyelets, which are going to be at the bottom of the seam. So you follow your pole sleeve down past the stitching down to the eyelet here. Same here, follow the stitching down from the end of the pole sleeve, locate that in there, and then the same here. We didn't need to peg out the tent before we started this process. It's easier with these sort of tent designs just to erect the tent using the poles, and then you can reposition the tent if need be before pegging it out. Now on one side of the tent, we have these adjustment points here, which allow you just to provide a bit of extra tension to the fabric if you need it, or to loosen it off. Changes in temperature, and if the tent gets wet, sometimes mean that that's necessary in order to keep the right kind of tension in the fabric. You can pick up the tent and reposition it at this point if you need to, and then when you're ready, we'll peg it out. Going to peg out the main points first, which will be where the poles are. Get the right amount of tension in the ground sheet here. As usual, the pegs going in at 45 degrees, pointing away from the tent. And if you're on particularly hard ground, if you need to use your foot to get some extra pressure on the tent peg, it's best off if you keep your heel on the ground and then just use the front of your foot just to put a bit of extra pressure on the peg. That means that you're going to be pushing it down the length of the peg and not standing on it from above like this, which is only going to bend the peg. So we'll get the same 3 corresponding pegs in on this side, again 45 degrees, pointing away from the tent. And then the next thing I'm going to do is to peg out the porch area here. The pegging points for the porch sometimes a bit confusing because people sometimes peg out the end of the strap here, which is not the right thing to do. What you're looking for is a loop which is created here, and pegging out that loop means that you'll be able to then use the tension adjustment in order to get the tent fabric nice and taut. So get those 2 pegged out like this, and then if you need to adjust the tension, you can do that through this buckle here. Okay. In windy conditions, we would need to peg out the guy lines as well. These are of course adjustable with this system here. So bringing this one out maybe at about 45 degrees, that to be perhaps a little longer. On this tent, I'd certainly recommend pegging out this side attachment point because this panel here is quite a large panel. If the wind is coming at you from the side, then this guy rope here is going to provide a little bit of extra tension into this panel here and make it less likely for the inner and outer to touch. Okay. If it was very, very calm conditions, the tent would work perfectly well without these front and rear guy lines being pegged out. Okay, so I've just pegged them out on this side just to show you. Final thing that we need to do after we've pitched any of our tents: pole bag, peg bag and tent bag. They're going right inside the sleeping compartment of the tent to make sure that we don't lose them. Okay, so they're going inside here, not inside the porch and not left out on the field. Okay, to take the tent down, we're just going to do those same steps in reverse. Please make sure that you always zip up your tent before you take it down. That means that pitching it becomes an awful lot easier if you can get the right tension in the fabrics. We'll whip out all of the pegs. It doesn't matter what order they come out in. And then we can take down the poles. When you remove the holes from the pole sleeves, it's important to make sure that you're pushing the poles through the pole sleeve and not trying to pull them through. Pulling them makes it more likely that the poles will split into their separate sections, and then it's harder to get them out of the tent. So we'll collapse the poles down and pop them into the pole bag. And then we're going to need the fabric to be in a long rectangle that's the same width as the length of the collapsed poles. Let's get our tent nice and neat. The neater it is to begin with, the easier it's going to be to fold it neatly and then to get it back into the tent bag. I'm going to flip over and fold in the porch just to make that into a nice shape there, and then I'm going to bring the tent into half. Now that's still too wide in comparison to the length of the folded poles, but I think that if we take that into half again, we're going to find that that's the right width. Let's get that into half there. Squash out a little bit of the air, and then we're ready to start rolling. I'm going to trap the tent pegs in towards the end, and I'm going to take care over this stage to make sure that I squeeze out as much air as I can and to tuck in any straps and guy ropes as I go. So this new style of Vango bag is easier to put over the top of your rolled tent while it's still on the floor. And then you'll find that it fits in nice and neatly. And just squeeze the air out, and then we can take the straps around and clip those up together. So there we go. That's how to pitch and take down the Vango Apex Geo 300.